Cent Podcast.
Okay, we're live. This is Matthew talking. We're back with another Cent Spotlight where we're trying to shine a light on all the amazing creators who are doing fantastic things on the Cent platform. My guest today is a really, really special one. I just came across him a couple days ago, actually, when I signed up for their really amazing Substack newsletter, the Arthlete, which is hard to pronounce, but it looks really cool.
Yeah.
And this is a creator who is already doing amazing things at the intersection of art, sports, and crypto. I'm really excited to get to know them more. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the show, Micah Johnson.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to get into it.
Cool. And well, to get started, I'm really curious to hear your background. I read about it already, but I'd like to hear about it in your own words. So tell us about your involvement in baseball growing up. How did your athletic side vibe with your creative side? And tell us about what took you from the major leagues to the major leagues of crypto art over here on Cent and Super Rare.
Yeah. So basically, I played Major League Baseball for a while, got drafted in 2012. And it wasn't until 2016 that I discovered art, which happened by a funny story. I got traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers, and in spring training, which is kind of like that training camp before the season starts, the head coach called me up to the front, and I was super nervous because the Dodgers had all these famous players on them. And he was like, "What do you like to do for fun?" And I was super nervous. And for some reason, I don't know what got into me, but I said paint. And he said, "Great, make a painting for Maury Wills." And Maury Wills is this Dodgers legend, And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, you have, 2 weeks to present it to the team." So that was the first painting, that I really had made. And I presented it to him. And for some reason, the team was really nice. And they were like, "This is really cool. You're really, really talented." I had no idea. So I kind of took their, which I believe is like kind of false, pat on the back, good job. And I kind of just ran with it. And shortly after that, that off season, the Dodgers had me do an art exhibit at the stadium. And it was an amazing show. Like, so many people were there. Way more than probably should have been to see the art I was making at the time, but it was amazing. And that's kind of how I got into the art world. And then as I retired from baseball and art became a full-time thing, I kind of started diving into other avenues and other streams. And that's kind of how I stumbled upon the world of crypto art.
When did you actually retire? And then walk us through how you actually found crypto art.
Yeah. I retired in 2019, and I can't lie. I probably found crypto art maybe a couple months ago, December maybe. I started getting into crypto. I had a lot of time on my hands in the studio, and I was like, okay, let me try to day trade some crypto. I don't suggest that for anybody. Very time consuming. And just reading more articles about crypto, and I found, crypto art, which, to be frank, was really intimidating at first. Like, I have no idea what that means, right? Like, I'm looking at all these artworks, and I'm like, I don't even know how they make this. I can barely turn on a computer. But the more I dived into it, and the community kind of just embraced me coming in here and asking a million questions, which was really cool. And that's kind of where I'm at now. It's just, how can I integrate the art I'm creating physically with the tech that all the other people are making out here, and use that to leverage kind of like this unison of bringing this mass population of sports fans who already appreciate my art, and kind of slowly helping them merge to, realize the value in crypto art.
So, I think you're at a really, really interesting point. A lot of times, I hadn't, even though I was previously a fan of sports, or I watch sports and things like that, I don't necessarily link art with sports very often. So trying to bridge maybe that gap in and of itself is probably a big challenge. But then also adding on the other wild card of crypto and this technological innovation on top of the two, and trying to bring all three together, that is a huge challenge. And I'm just curious, since you're just starting out, I'm sure you have like some sort of roadmap of what you are trying to do to accomplish. But like, tell us how you're going to try to bridge the gap between art world, sports, and crypto.
So you would think that, you know, art and sports have this like this completely other side of the tracks, right? But in reality, when I held that show at Dodger Stadium and I saw how many of my teammates came and how many of these like, you know, season ticket holders were there and other athletes from other sports in the LA area were there, it made me really realize that, you know, they're really not that much different. Like these guys really do appreciate someone who just probably is working as hard as they are. Because as an athlete, you work your whole life, right? Like you can't just go to the major leagues or the NBA and just by picking up a basketball or baseball, you know, when you're in high school. You have to do this your whole life. So maybe it's like that appreciation for someone really dedicating their life to their craft that allured them to the, you know, the arts. But with the crypto art world, it's taken me a lot of responsibilities to educate myself so that when they do ask me questions, I can answer them appropriately. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these guys, they are asking me, a lot of my teammates, you know, what is this? What is this? But it's cool to see that the same questions they were asking me about art, they're asking me about crypto art now. Like, you know, their level of interest has peaked, you know, again. So I think that with the crypto world, the ability to create this kind of mass adoption of the world is very important to the sustainability of several of these really cool projects that are going on in the world. And I think that, you know, art is just kind of like is just another avenue to connect people. Does that make sense?
Totally. And actually, I mean, I was thinking about sports from a high level, but bringing it down to the athletes and that level, that makes total sense, actually.
Yeah. They, you know, these guys, they appreciate things, right? Like they appreciate someone who works hard. You know, the fans of sports, the hardest thing I've experienced as an artist was that they wanted to see me create sports related art, right? It's kind of like just what made sense. But as an artist, I had other layers to me that I wanted to express. But it came to that fine line of like, okay, do I create sport art and sell it because, you know, they're going to buy it? Or do I just go off and just leave my sports life behind? So like, that's probably my biggest struggle right now is like, do I continue with sports art that, you know, fans are going to buy, or do I keep expanding? And I think what crypto art allows me to do is kind of like reinvent myself, right? Like I'm new here. No one really knows anything about me. So I had the ability to come in and kind of create things, you know, using different techniques and expressing myself in a different way.
Well, I'm curious to kind of unpack that, like where you're going to go from here. But before that, because I've looked at some of your previous work that you've shared, obviously on Super Rare, your most recent piece, No More Art, plus the works that is based on. So if you could walk us through your creative journey up until now, like what has defined your style to this point? What traditional methods have you employed to create the work that you've been making? I think that would be interesting. And then we can look forward.
Yeah. So with that piece I uploaded on Super Rare, those are the first pieces I've ever done with oil painting. And up to that point, I was strictly acrylic. I learned underneath these brothers named Shelby and Sandy, who have this like cult following in the pop art community. And they were strictly acrylic. So that's just kind of what I mimicked. But with that exhibit in Atlanta, with those pieces from No More Art, I said, okay, I'm going to expand to oil. And I was really focused on mimicking these old masterworks that I would see in museums. And without any formal training, you know, it was very tedious. And I'm sure a lot of the techniques weren't correct, but I really found a passion with blending the color values and finding the right combination. And all those works, you can see like, you know, the main subject is black and white. That's because I didn't really know how to use color correctly. To the point where I'm at now, I'm working still in black and white, primarily main subject, but I'm starting to add in different colors, you know, different shades shadows don't have to be black. They can have a blue hue to them. You know what I mean? So it just takes years and years of learning who you are as an artist. You know, the process is very, I'm sure a lot of creatives can relate, is you don't know what you want to be. And I think social media is almost like the biggest hindering to a person's creativity because they go on there and they see so many different artists and like, okay, I want to mimic this style and that style. And you kind of lose the person or the artist that you are. So up until recently, I never really knew my exact style, but now I finally figured out that, you know, it doesn't matter what I paint or what I create. I just have this thing with black and white with mixing a little bit of color that just works perfectly. And that's just something that I really am obsessed with.
And some of the works that you've presented or like that are on your site have sold. Actually, there's a couple allusions to sports, I guess, like the boxing gloves, right? You had the baseball player and the 0.15 seconds that they have to react to a pitch. But there's a lot of art themes. There's a lot of like violence or like firearms and things like that in the art. Where does that come from? That's interesting because that kind of doesn't fit into the narrative, at least that I've read so far. I'm curious to understand that.
Yeah, so some of those works from this exhibit in Atlanta were kind of like at a tumultuous time where like in America where there was a lot of like 2017. So like Trump became president. You had a lot of these like racial tensions, right? And for me, I was like, okay, this is my chance to express myself because as an athlete, you only can say so much with your platform before you get in trouble, right? You have to be conscious, it seems, of certain political views that you make public. But through art, I've had the ability to kind of express myself and say, you know, you can't really dictate what I create. You know, this is completely separate of what the person I am when, you know, I'm being interviewed by ESPN or something, right? So that was when I was creating those works with like the guns and the violence and stuff. It was at a time where, you know, I felt like I needed to express myself somehow, but I was also conscious of my career as a baseball player and not being able to say it publicly, you know.
No, that totally makes sense. And that's a pretty interesting use of art, I think, there to express some of the views or things that maybe the organization wouldn't approve of if you were to speak to like a journalist or something on the side or make a blog post, right? That's kind of perfect for what art can do or can be as a form of expression. So since you are so new to art and the scene, I'm sure there's a lot of things that you want to learn, maybe different tools that you want to get to know a little bit better, parts of your own craft that you want to keep honing and making better. I'm just curious, like, what do you want to improve heading forward about your work and about your craft?
Well, I can tell you right now that now that I'm into the crypto art world, being able to use the technology that is at our disposal is almost like a different medium has been created to use on a canvas. Like when acrylic came about or oil came about, right? It was like this new medium. And I think with technology, it's just another medium that people can use. And I think that you're going to look back on in history and talk about this time where these artists, all these amazing artists in the crypto world are trendsetters, right? And I think that, you know, with my art going forward, incorporating some of those techniques with technology is something that I'm very, very passionate about because I think it can easily provide that little gateway from the physical art world to the digital art world and be kind of like that seamless transition where people can finally make sense of both worlds. So I'm browsing Super Rare and Known Origin all the time, looking at different kind of technologies people are using and just mind blown at every time I see something, you know, I know nothing about. And it's funny because we were just talking before about, you know, I was approached by a sport team who's renovating their stadium about doing some artwork. And, you know, it came to me, I can put paintings up across the stadium, but if I can integrate some kind of technology into these paintings, like augmented reality or something, it makes art interactive for people. And it might just be that little grab to them that gravitates them towards art even more than just a painting on the wall or something like that, right?
Mm, totally. I mean, I feel like digital art is going to catch so many more folks' attention than like the previous traditional work on the wall type of art, just because it's more accessible, right? People, they buy like the great artists of the past, they put it on their wall, they put it in a vault, and very few people can actually see it. Maybe they see a digital image, but it's like not the same because it's the physical part. It's made to be seen in real life. Whereas the digital work, purely digital too, is made to be experienced through a screen, which like billions of people have access to. So it's just the timing thing of letting folks come across, and then the ease of which folks can come across the works that speak to them the most. And then when we let them know that actually you can own those works and sell them and share them, I think that it's another kind of mind blowing moment outside of being dumbstruck by like a beautifully gorgeous work of art or something. But you had been talking about just the crypto artists that are on Super Rare and across the other platforms like Maker's Place and Known Origin, and some of the amazing things that they're doing just with the technology outside of their amazing work. And we had been talking before we started recording about the possibilities to collaborate with a lot of these artists being so easy because of technology. I'm just wondering, during the course of your perusing all the amazing art that are on these platforms, are there any artists that you've come across that you're like, oh man, I really, really, really want to do something with this artist or learn from them or create something together? Has that happened yet?
Yeah, definitely. I've been talking to quite a few that, I admire their work and talking about different collaboration possibilities. But yeah, like Pac, for example, right? Asked me a couple months ago, like, you think this is cool? Like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't know what it is, right? But now that like I'm really looking at it, like, what is that? Like, that's incredible to me, right? Like, it's kind of hard to put into words. Like, it's very captivating, right? Or like, I look at like a lot of money, for example, and see like how he can animate pretty much anything, right? Like, it's like the stuff I see it's very, 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 very inspiring, because when I animated my first work, No More Art, like, it's so tedious. Like, it is a very tedious process, and it's very meticulous, and I don't know. It's hard to explain, man. It's like I'm inspired by so many people I see.
Mm-hmm. It's the deeper you go, like the crazier it is. Like, just to throw out a couple artists that when I learned about their process or when I first came across them, it kind of like blew my mind. Matt Kane is an artist. He's probably like the digital equivalent of the artists who make their own colors, who make their own, like, the brushes. He codes the programs that animate his work himself.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. When I heard about that, I'm like, because I had seen his work before, I'm like, wow, I've never seen like a Monet deconstructed like that. That's so cool. But then I realized like he created the program that deconstructed it and layered on all the images and like did everything. I'm like, oh no, that's that's crazy.
Yeah, that's mad impressive. Like, if in order for people to, people who have no idea what crypto is or blockchain or anything like that, to appreciate that, they have to be told that, right? Like, they have to be informed. I think sometimes the lack of information or lack of layman's terms information kind of dissuades people. But like telling me that or telling somebody that, like, that's like, oh, I didn't know that, like, let me find out more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And another cool aspect is that even though the crypto art seems to be like an all encompassing scene, like there are multiple sub scenes within crypto art. Like there's like this really interesting punk movement that's erupting with artists that were formerly on Super Rare, but got booted off and are kind of like the rebels in the space trying to pioneer like this vaporwave form of crypto art, which is really interesting and totally like anti everything. But folks like Robness Cyberpop or Max Osiris, it's just like, the attitudes that you're able to kind of express within the art and with crypto, it's really interesting because it's not just like, oh, everyone's doing digital art. Everyone is doing these really unique things in their own space and building out like their own circles of what they're doing artistically, which like fast forward like 10 years, 20 years, it'll be interesting to see how the digital art geography is kind of laid out and what's popular, what's going on, what's bubbling beneath the surface, what's fringe. That stuff is all literally in front of our eyes unfolding, which is just, it's kind of a blessing to be in the space this early on, to see how this stuff will unroll.
Yeah, I was literally talking to somebody the other day, and it's like, one of my former teammates, and he didn't know anything about crypto or anything like that. And the way I explained it to him was, it's like living through when Warhol had his warehouse in New York, right? Or he was collaborating with like Basquiat and stuff, right? It's like living through that era because it's so transformative that it will affect the way art is made across physical and digital works for history, right? Like technology is not going anywhere. So you're literally on the cusp of an era in art that is going to be taught throughout schools,
Totally. And I 100% support how you explained what's happening right now. A lot of the other artists in the space are 100% on board that this is the new movement in art, like something that happens maybe every 50, 60 years. Like that moment is now. But instead of being relegated or being limited to a specific couple of neighborhoods in New York City during like the 70s, right? Like this is something that's worldwide. People, as long as they connect to the internet, they can get on board to this movement. Like there's folks like Oshinachi who are over in, I think, Nigeria, and they're creating works of art using Microsoft Word, right? Which is another mind-blowing thing. It's like everyone pretty much has access to tools that you can use to make art and make great art. And now that we have this digital money where everyone around the world can earn through their art, man, I'm so excited to see what happens in the next couple of years. But before we go, I just want to make sure that we plug all your channels, like where folks can find your art, subscribe to. Yeah. And that's one thing I would suggest to you. Just try to kind of consolidate all those things because, but I know you're on Super Rare, but I couldn't exactly find your address super easily. So just like throw it out there for everyone. Like, where are your channels? Where should folks look for you and your work?
Yes. Everything kind of flows through Super Rare. So I think on Super Rare, it's the same as my Twitter handle at Micah Johnson, at Micah_Johnson3. It's the same on Super Rare, I believe. And on Super Rare, it also has links to my Art Fleet page on Substack, which I'll be updating with my physical works and, different press releases about them that are featured in my digital works, pricing lists if they have been sold, just to be transparent with the collectors. And then my actual physical work website is actually linked to Super Rare as well. So if you just check out Super Rare on my page there or follow me through Twitter, you should be able to navigate your way around to where I'm at. I try to keep the same tag.
Nice. And on Scent, I think you're Micah Johnson. So we'll be looking for you there as well. Well, it was a pleasure to chat, Micah. I think a lot of folks will be interested in your previous background and then your journey ahead. So really excited, man.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to do this.
Yeah. Well, have a great night. And I'm sure this is just the first chat of many, and keep creating, man.
I appreciate it, bro.
Thank you very much for listening to my conversation with Micah Johnson. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation as much as I did recording it, make sure that you seed it on Scent. And look out for the next episode that will drop in a couple of days that I recorded with the creator of the All On-Chain NFT project, otherwise known as Avastars, and its creator, Jim McNellis.
Podcast.